Instead of doing that thing that everybody does in November where you're not supposed to do something, I decided to do something better. Read.
Read! Read!
So I'm going to be reading one manga for each day of the month of November. But there are some rules I'm going to lay out first. 1, this manga cannot have an anime. Because let's be honest, most manga that are really good end up becoming anime, so if this was just a video tour I told everyone, hey, go watch Chainsaw Man, it wouldn't be that interesting. And rule number 2 is I'll only be reading 10 chapters per series, but that still leaves me with over 300 chapters to read in just a single month. And some of these manga were good, and some were bad. And some were even better than good, they were amazing, and then some were... yeah. But I forgot how actually dumb I am, because when I started getting into a few of these series, I just couldn't stop reading them. I read so many manga, from your basic shonens, to your isekais, to romance, to suspense, to horror, to whatever you want to call this, but the video is going to be timestamped, so feel free to jump around, get a drink or a snack, get cozy, and feel free to use this video as a sort of manga recommendation video, because I'm going to go over 30 new mangas that you may want to check out. Wait, what was that? Were you just talking to East right now? It was no mistake. You are my enemy after all. This scar is my proof of self, and I wear it with pride. But you bear the cursed brand. Truly, it deserves to be hidden. Dang, that hurt. Aw, Phone, don't tell me you were just napping up in a tree again. What you just saw is actually what just happened in this manga. This girl just hit this man so hard he got transported all the way back into ancient Egypt. Now I'll be honest, when I first started looking into this manga and reading the first pages, I honestly did not expect it to be as good as it was. But when I saw that part right there, it instantly piqued my curiosity, and I was trying to figure out what really just happened. Now, Spirit Circle is a seinen manga, and at times when you're reading it, it can definitely feel a little bit slow paced, but that's a deliberate action because it's not just telling one story, but it's actually going to be telling several stories. And it's definitely worth waiting, because if you stick with it, you'll get to fight scenes like this. The story starts off with this boy, Futa. He's your normal average schoolboy, except for one thing, and that's that he can see ghosts. And a new transfer student comes to do his class, which is this girl here, Coco. And one thing about her is she's accompanied by a ghost. Essentially, one day after they're leaving school and they're saying their goodbyes, her ghost happens to say goodbye, and he responds to the ghost, basically outing himself that he can see the ghost as well. And after he's explaining to her that he has his weird birthmark, but he's always tries to hide it because it's so weird, Coco all of a sudden suddenly cuts him off by grabbing at his shirt very aggressively. She starts talking all crazy, whipping out this weird little circle thing and knocks him all the way back into an ancient time. If it isn't obvious already, this story is going to follow a lot of reincarnations, and that is what made it so interesting to me to read. I'm not going to give away too much of the manga now, because this is one that I'm going to highly recommend that you read yourself. If you're into any sort of seinen manga, this is something that's truly a gem, and I am so glad that I found this. I know in the beginning I only said 10 chapters per manga, but hey, rules were meant to be broken, because I definitely read way more than 10 chapters on this one. This one I'm giving an 8 out of 10. I would highly recommend it if you're into any sort of seinen manga.
Space. The final frontier.
There's really only 2 words you need to explain this manga, and that's space, isekai. And that's about it, because that's about as deep as the manga gets. The story on this one is about as basic as it can get. Basically, you have this guy, he's a shut-in, and he always plays video games, and then one day, he gets transferred into this video game. But already on chapter 1, I started to have problems with this manga, because he basically wakes up in this world, realizes that he's in this video game he used to play, and doesn't question it at all. He just kind of starts living life there. It's like, oh, well, I guess I'm just in this game. Like, if you were to wake up in another world, I would be so shocked and so confused on why this happened, but he just kind of rolls with it. He's just like, oh, well, this is my life now. Let's keep going on. So, yeah. It has a good set of characters, and I really like how they kind of delve into the shipbuilding aspect of it, and they have all these kind of different ships and space battles. It's cool if you like space, but honestly this one was pretty mid as I read it. I'm giving it like a 5 out of 10. I wouldn't really recommend it. I did it, Father. I'm now a heavy knight. Father? Just now I heard it wrong, right? You said sword saint, right? Crap, I mixed up the memory of my previous life and this life. Hey, show it to me now. Heavy knight, you say? What the hell does that even mean? The numbers are so low that you can't even see a single thing across the status board. Not to mention, you don't even have a single attack skill. This is totally what you'd call a faulty class. I have no concern for such things. So yeah, the intro to this one is basically a father getting mad at his son for choosing the tank class, as if that's even a bad class. This one is going to give you major shield hero vibes, and actually I kind of enjoyed seeing him have what's considered an underrated class but kind of find the cool ways on how to use it. This one also has a really amazing art style. I loved it so much, and I can 100% see this one getting an anime. Even just normal mobs that you see around that he's fighting, they tell it in such a gripping way with the panel design that it actually feels a little bit threatening, and it's pretty enjoyable to read even just the basic fights in this. This one I may visit in the future. I would definitely recommend this if you're a really big isekai fan, and I definitely recommend it more than the space isekai. I'm giving this one like a maybe 6.5 out of 10. I didn't know that a manga about rock climbing would really be this good. Now this is a sports manga, but it goes much beyond that because it tells such an emotionally gripping and visually stunning story, and it explores themes of isolation, determination, and the pursuit of one's limits in the context of just mountain climbing. Something about when you see manga panels like this one right here just evokes such intense emotion in you, and it's just so great to read. Now this isn't your typical sports manga like Haikyuu or something like that, because there's no friendship, there's no team spirit, there's no working towards the same goal. It's more psychological than sports. Climbing is not ever to beat the other opponent, it's just to reach the top of this mountain. And as you're just watching, as you watch the main character struggle and fight just to complete this goal, it just hooks you in so much. This is, like I said, another one that 10 chapters just weren't enough for me. I almost don't even want to say more about it because I'm just going to say you have to read this one. You're going to be genuinely surprised on how good of a manga this is. Solid 9 out of 10. You need to read this one. How much would you value a human life? How much would you value every single day that you live? If you really had to think about the question of what's the monetary value of what a human life is worth, what is the answer that you come up with? Is it maybe how much money they earn in their lifespan? It's a very challenging question to answer. It may or may not have an answer, but it's one that this manga explores in the most beautiful way. Although I had the rule of only reading 10 chapters per manga, with this one being only about 16 chapters long, I'm not going to be explaining all 10 chapters I read, but if there's any manga on this list that I would say you have to read, it would definitely be this one. With it being so short, it's such an amazing manga, and I truly don't even know how this isn't even a movie yet, since I truly think that this would be an anime movie that can rival something like A Silent Voice. The general premise of this one is that you follow around Kusanagi, who's a man who's down on his luck and feels like he has nothing going good for his life. And in an act of desperation, as he's selling all of his books for money, he ends up running into the shopkeeper, who tells him that he has an option for cash, and that's actually to sell part of his lifespan. It's calculated that he only has 30 years and 3 months remaining in his lifespan, and in an act of maybe desperation or not wanting to live this life anymore, he decides to sell all 30 years, leaving him with only 3 months to enjoy the rest of his life. As he's living the last remaining 3 months of his life, he's actually followed around and shadowed by the girl who bought his lifespan, as she kind of monitors him for his last time to make sure that he doesn't do anything too out of line. And although there's so much I want to say about this, I definitely am probably going to make a full review on this. That's all the explanation I'm going to give as of now, because like I mentioned, this one's only about 16 chapters long, and I highly recommend that you read this one. Like I said, if there's any of these manga that you choose to read, you should go through the emotional journey of reading this one. I honestly, truly would give this one a solid 10 out of 10. You have to read this one. So after that emotional roller coaster, let's talk about a manga that's a lot more lighthearted and a lot more fun. A Man and His Cat. And I'm gonna be honest, I literally only chose this one because I have 2 cats myself who I love to death, and so I just thought it must be fun to read a manga about cats. So if you haven't guessed it already, this manga is gonna follow a man and his cat. That's it. That's basically the whole manga. There's not much more for me to talk about. Okay, I'll say a little bit more than that. This one's a very quick read. Each chapter is usually just a few pages long, and it's just kind of daily activities of this man and his cat, but it's just very lighthearted, very warm and fuzzy feeling. It's a very fun manga. There's not too much to say about it other than you have this man, you had this cat that was seemingly ugly, but he loves this cat because all cats are cute, let's be honest, and they just kind of go about their daily activities. This one, honestly, I'd give like a maybe 7 out of 10. I don't really want to rate it less than that. It's maybe like a 6 out of 10. It's just a short, fun read. I wouldn't even really give it a rating. You should read this if you just want a good, lighthearted, quick manga.
Sorry about that, you tasty looking little marshmallow you. And here you were just looking to play with
Suzu,
us. I told you before, stop hanging out with Ayakashi. Just because you can see them doesn't mean that there's something you should mess with. I can wait no longer. You should feel honored to be offered as my sacrifice to me, maiden. You're a prime candidate for human sacrifice? Really? How could I tell you that, dumbass Suzu? Senseless gibberish. Ninja exorcist jutsu. Hidden jutsu. Sex awakening flow reversal.
Huh? I'm a girl now?
So, Ayakashi Traingle.
Hey, wait.
Wait, what?
You know this is actually an anime right now.
Well, I already read it, so I guess I'm going to talk about it anyways. So anyways, the general premise of this one is you have this exorcist ninja, which is literally the coolest name that you can give somebody. But you have this exorcist ninja Matsuri, and he has his childhood friend, which is this girl here, Suzu, and there's these evil spirits around the world called Ayakashi. And one day this Ayakashi, which starts off as a cute little cat, tries to attack Suzu, and as Matsuri defends her, he gets turned into a girl. Now, one thing I need to say about this manga, and I actually didn't read it for this reason, I found it out as I was reading it, but it is an ecchi manga, so be prepared for that. Not only is it an ecchi manga, but it's also written by Kentaro Yubuki, which is actually the creator of Black Cat, which I didn't even know that going into this, and he was also the author for the To Love Aru series, so you can definitely tell it's an ecchi manga, but it's by someone that's pretty well versed in that field. Honestly, this is a simple plot. It has really amazing art, I will give it that, but it's not too complex. It's definitely something that I would say watch the anime over the manga, but if you're in the ecchi manga, I would say I'd recommend it. I'm honestly though giving it like a maybe 7.5 out of 10. Recommend it if you like ecchi. The year is 2009 and you are in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. There's absolute chaos everywhere. Everyone's screaming. People's faces are getting bitten off. But your name's Hideo Suzuki and you've been waiting for this your whole life because you're armed with a shotgun and you are a hero. But you're also schizophrenic. Now, I do have to say, I actually already recorded my thoughts on this manga and I had to go ahead and re-record it because I had the rule of only reading 10 chapters per manga, and the first 10 chapters of the story, I'll admit, were a lot confusing and I actually did not like the manga. That was until I turned until the next chapter, chapter 11, as I was just skimming through the manga and I saw this scene. Huh? It's only 6, so I probably should go say hello. Let's just take a quick peek, I guess. Hey, Teko, are you in there? Teko? Oh, sorry, did I wake you up? You don't have to get up, it's fine. Wait, Teko? Teko, wait, what the fuck? And yeah, safe to say, when I saw that, I was pretty peeked into what was going on. This one's definitely going to keep you second guessing since the main character is schizophrenic and it's set in a zombie apocalypse. It has you questioning what is real and what is not. You see moments where he's talking to colleagues and he thinks he has his conversation, but it actually didn't happen. I mean, it makes you even question, is this even really a zombie apocalypse? So I don't have too many thoughts on this one now. I'm going to have to keep reading it. I would give it right now like a maybe 7 out of 10, but I would say if you're into any of the kind of horror aspect or you're into mangas about zombies, I would definitely recommend this one.
And his name is
Nico. Forget tsunderes, now it's all about a girl who is just absolutely infatuated with the male protagonist. Already chapter 1, you have this normal looking guy, then you have the girl being like, oh my god, he's so handsome, he's so perfect. Like, the general plot of this one is that you have this witch here, Nico, and she just finished her witch training, so it's now time for her to pick a familiar. And most witches at that point would pick like a cat or something like that, like an animal as a familiar. But instead of choosing like your normal animal or something, she chooses her childhood friend, which is this guy here, Moi. And he's also an ogre, but he's really just a human, but instead of choosing an animal, she goes with him. Now, generally, as you're reading this, you're just going to see that Nico's a little bit clumsy, and Moi is just kind of fed up with her. He doesn't really want to deal with her, but not only being her familiar, he's also kind of her bodyguard and trying to protect her as she's doing all these clumsy things. And basically, as he's kind of annoyed with her, the girl is just absolutely infatuated with him. She just loves him so much. So that's just generally just a little bit of antics. It's a pretty lighthearted read, especially if you like romance. I would recommend it. I'm giving out a lot of 6s just because I feel like a 7 and above means it's a great manga. I give this one like a 6 out of 10. I have no more enemies. I just simply want to find a place to die. Maybe travel around, eat some food, and see scenery I never got to see before. that was in town. Huh. Nice to meet you again, Bard Rowan. Here we go again. Raise your sword and fight me. I won't let you live like last time. The Old Knight in Frontier, Bard Loen, is actually a manga that I'm surprised I'm just hearing about now, as I had to do my own research to find it, because I would say if you're into things like Vagabond or Berserk even, I can definitely see you reading this, as those are mangas that I love and I was instantly captivated by this one. Now, the general premise of this one is it starts out with the main protagonist simply saying that he wants to die. But generally, he's just an old knight who's retired now, and he was a really great and respected knight back in his prime, but at this point, he just wants to retire and simply find a place to die. But it doesn't work that way, and essentially an enemy comes back trying to assassinate him, and he's thrown into one last adventure that he has to complete. Now, this one gets pretty complex into the politics of the world, and I would definitely say if you're into any sort of medieval scenery, like if you like Skyrim or things like Dungeons and Dragons, you would definitely like the world building in this one, and it's paired with a great art style. I've been enjoying my time so far. Honestly, I'm going to give it like a maybe 7.5 out of 10. I'm going to definitely keep reading this one. I'd recommend it if you like any sort of medieval stuff. In the year 2020, the concept of gender equality was no more. Which I just have to start off by saying is a pretty wild first line of the manga, but anyways. And your name's Yuki. You're just your average third year high school student. When one day when you're walking home all of a sudden, No way, what is this? Mato! All of a sudden, you're transported into a demonic world, and there's only one way to escape, and that's to become this girl's slave. Now, let's be honest, if you're reading this type of manga, it's for a certain reason why, and that's because you're into a certain type of thing. But aside from it being essentially a fetish manga, it's actually a really good story, and I have to say, I know that it's getting an anime adaptation soon in the winter of 2024, but this is the end of 2023 that I'm releasing this, so I'm still in time to say that it does not have an anime yet. Now, the general plot of this one is there's a demon-filled dimension which is known as the Mato, and it's threatening humanity, and it opens up in Japan. And there's a type of a peach tree, not to be confused with devil fruits, and the peach tree gives fruit that gives powers. Once again, not like One Piece, but essentially those powers only work for women. So with the concept of gender equality being no more, this is really about women empowerment, and the women are kind of the fighting spirit of this world, which is a pretty interesting thing. It's not something that I've personally seen in a manga or anime before, but at the same time, each woman's in the tightest leather you can ever imagine. If you're the type of guy to go to an anime convention and pay a girl to step on you or something like that, I guarantee you probably read this one. But like I said, it actually does have a somewhat interesting story, but this is one that as I was reading my 10 chapters, I figured I would just probably watch the anime if I wanted to see more than it. So far maybe giving it like a 6.5 out of 10. Recommended if you like anime girls in leather suits. So Dog Ninjen is a manga that's so bad that it actually makes it really good. Now, I actually found this one just years ago on Twitter. I was scrolling through and I just saw this page right here, and it's just it captivates you. I mean, you have to figure out what is this title and what is this, and I honestly don't even know how the creator was actually able to publish this into actual physical book format, but he did it and I have a copy of it. You're just gonna have to bear with me as I explain the general plot of this, because it's as wild as the title of it is. So you have this thing here, Rex, and I mean thing because he's actually half dog, half human, and he was born after his father essentially forced himself onto a female dog. And this disturbing heritage basically has led Rex to living a life to where he's just rejected by all of society. And that's grown so much hate and resentment in him that he essentially wants to force himself out on his dad. Yes, it basically is as insane as it sounds, and I promise you it's only gets worse from here in a good way. Now, I would say with this one, it has a funny title. It actually has a pretty good story, surprisingly. If I gave it a real score, I'd honestly give it like a maybe 7 out of 10, but I'm going to give this one a funny out of 10 for the title. I would recommend it if you just want a funny shonen manga to read. For My Hero Academia Vigilantes, I have to be honest, this was basically my way of cheating because I said the manga can't have an anime, but technically this one does not have an anime. Wait. Man, well, it's not out yet, so I can still talk about it. I wanted to find a shonen manga that wasn't too popular, so I did what's best. Find the sub-series of one of the most popular shonen mangas, so that's how I started reading this one. Now, honestly, the way I felt about this manga as I read it is basically the creator was like, hey, let's imagine Deku, but he's not just the good boy Deku, he's a Deku who sometimes follows the rules and sometimes doesn't, because that's basically what the main character feels like. So you have the main character here, who I'm just going to call Knockoff Deku. You have the girl of the group, who I promise is only here just to show off her ass, like she is just always showing it off. And then you have this vigilante Knuckle Duster, which I just have to say is the most non-threatening hero name you can think of. Like imagine you're getting robbed or something, you hear Knuckle Duster's on the way, like I would have no hope in him. There's not too much to say about this one. Basically it's My Hero Academia, but they're vigilantes, so they're not licensed heroes and they can kind of do a little bit more darker things, I guess. But honestly, the thing about this one, 6 out of 10, recommended if you like My Hero Academia. If you don't, you can read much better shonens. Nozoki Ana is actually a manga I've seen pop up in my comment section throughout the People series multiple times, so thank you guys for recommending it to me. But I just have to say, the first chapter literally is titled A Peephole, and you guys already know how I feel about peepholes at this point. The first pages of the first chapter, I promise you guys, was giving me PTSD and whiplash as I saw him looking through a peephole, and I just remembered the entire Peephole series. Now, imagine the Peephole series I've been covering already and replace the aspect of killing with ecchi, and you have this manga basically. And I don't know if it's because I've already covered one series featuring peepholes, but I got hooked into this one as well, and I kept reading it. I don't know why, I just can't stop. And before I see a comment about it, yes, I know that this one has an anime, and I still read it because I was seeing comments about it, and so I just wanted to check it out because apparently I have a thing for peepholes. Wait, that sounds really wrong. I take that back. This one's kind of a lot more simple. It's an ecchi, it's romance, and it features the peephole to where this boy is spying on the girl in the other room, and she's doing stuff, and you can only imagine. But because I guess I'm a degenerate, I don't know, I'm gonna give it like a 7 out of 10. Recommended if you're a degenerate like me. So Deathtopia is another manga that I saw in my comment section, so I decided to think, oh well, let's go check this out, and it's another ecchi. Yeah, I can definitely tell that you guys have a certain type of thing for mangas, but anyways, let's just forget about that aspect and actually look into the manga. To explain this manga, I'm just gonna kind of recount what happens in the first chapter because it hit me like a whirlwind, and I think that's the best way for me to explain it. So you start off with this boy, and he's waking up in the hospital, and he has no eyes. And the doctors and everyone, they're panicking, they're trying to figure out what's going on. They're basically telling him that he has little time left to live, and he's not gonna make it. At the same time this is going on, you cut over to a girl here who's an escort of the night, and she's just getting finished with one of her clients when she makes a joke about how she's always being watched by somebody, and you see an eyeball in her closet looking over them. Keep that in mind. And as she opens up her closet, you see nothing but just jars full of eyeballs. I mean, when I saw this, I'm kind of confused at this point, but let's keep going. As she looks at these eyeballs, she thinks about the guy who's in the hospital talking about how she wants to gouge out his eyeballs with her own hands. So she sets off, and you go back into the hospital. So then you skip over to the hospital, and this guy is still there. He has no eyes. His family's trying to visit him, and he has no idea what's going on. He was in some sort of an accident, and now he's waking up and he doesn't have eyes, and he's trying to figure out what's going on. So he's getting transported from room to room by one of the nurses, and all of a sudden the nurse takes out a rope, ties it around his head, and starts choking him. And I have to give it to him, he's actually pretty smart because somehow, some way, even with no eyes and not knowing his surrounding, he picks up some sort of a toolbox or something, reaches back and slams it into her head, and she falls to the ground. But the rope is still around his neck, so she starts strangling him, and she's telling him how she's gonna take his eyes, and then all of a sudden, 3 anime girls pull up, guns out, blasting, and just kill her. And yeah, at that point I was like, what's even going on? I don't know, but I was intrigued to say the least. Now that's just a short retelling because I may want to make a series covering this manga because that was actually really intriguing to me, and I want to know what happens past the 10 chapters I already read. Now past this chapter, as the manga goes on, he basically undergoes a miraculous surgery and he gets his eyes back, but at the same time he gets his eye back, he gains some extrasensory perception abilities, which, I mean, I guess if you lost your eyes once, you might as well get them back with extra powers, so that's pretty cool. And the rest of the manga, I'll keep it pretty short. Basically, there's a serial killer who collects eyes and they're after him, but at the same time, you have him and this group of girls who are now chasing the serial killer to catch them. And I'm going to say, like I mentioned, I'll most likely cover it, so I'm not going to say more than that. But so far, I did enjoy it. I'm going to give it a 7.1 out of 10, just because I think it's better than the Nozoki Ana recommendation. I would say recommended if you're into an anime like Black Lagoon, or if you liked reading DeadTube, but you don't want as much gore in it, because this was actually pretty interesting. So the reason I read Sandland, because I know that it has an OVA, but it actually has a video game for it, and that looked pretty interesting to me, and so I figured why not read the manga. And with it only being a 1-volume manga at about 14 chapters, I just read the entire thing because it's not that more than the 10 chapters. Already off the bat, you can tell that this is made by Akira Toriyama, which is basically the godfather of manga, the creator of the Dragon Ball series. Now I can see why this was only basically just a 1-volume manga. It definitely could have continued on because the world is pretty interesting, but basically, from what I know, basically Akira Toriyama just wanted to draw a manga about a guy in a tank, and it just kind of progressed from there. The general premise of this one is basically there's no more water in the world just due to humans and wars and things like that, kind of like the movie Rango, and there's this king now who basically controls all the water supply. So he basically has a monopoly because if you want water, you have to basically buy bottled water from them at whatever price they charge. And there's demons and humans in this world, and they both need water. So in this one, we're going to be following around. You have this police officer who's a human, you have this thief, and then you have Beelzebub, which is a demon. And basically they're on a journey to find this oasis, or where this reservoir of water that the king is getting it from. And that's really all I'm going to explain as of now, because like I mentioned, it's only 14 chapters long. I would read it if you just want a quick little story, and if you like Dragon Ball, if you like Akira Toriyama's works. So far though, I'd honestly give it maybe like a 7 out of 10. Recommended it if you like Dragon Ball. So do you know the meme of how many kindergartners or maybe 5-year-olds you can beat in a fight? That's a really bizarre thing to think about, but basically that's what I thought about when I read the title of this manga, which is Kindergarten Wars. And it's not really about that, but that's basically what made me read this one. Now, the premise of this one is going to sound really bizarre. Basically, you have a class of kindergartners, and there are assassins after them, and basically the staff are trying to protect the kindergartens from these deadly killers. And yes, it's really that bizarre, but it actually is a pretty good manga. This one's still ongoing, and I would say with it being a Shonen Jump manga, I can 100% see this getting an anime in the future. And it's almost shocking as you read it, because the first chapter literally just has an assassin shooting a guy in the head, and then he aims his sniper rifle sights on a kindergartner until the teacher comes in to stop it. Like, you're just reading it and it's just kind of bizarre like that, but it gets better. Basically, imagine Koro Sensei from Assassination Classroom, but instead of trying to kill the class, he's just doing everything to defend the class, and you basically have this manga. I'd give it honestly though like a maybe 7 out of 10, recommended if you like Assassination Classroom. Now, I'm a pretty simple guy. I definitely like when a character is well written and it has a lot of depth, but sometimes I just want to read something or watch something and just see a fight scene to where they're just beating the ever-loving crap out of each other, and that's why I read Holylannd. And it definitely does provide that on several different levels, but on a way that's kind of different than other fighting manga you may read, like Hajime no Ippo or things like that. It kind of has its own style to it, so it's pretty captivating. Instead of being like Baki, where you have these super muscular people, you actually start with you, and I don't mean like you, but I mean you as in you. Yeah, you.
Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
Just answer the damn questions. Who are you?
I have told you.
And he's basically the most sleeper build thug hunter you can think of, because he's not some swole Baki looking character. He's just pretty normal looking, but he has hands and he can fight. One thing I appreciate about this one is it's not just about the fighting, but also kind of delves into the psychology of what's going through your mind as a fight goes on, and as a fighter itself. As many times as I've said fight so far, you can basically tell what this manga is going to be about. It's a fighting manga. It's not really martial arts. It's more like street fighting. I would honestly though give it like a maybe 8 out of 10. I did enjoy it just because I like fighting. Recommended if you're into fighting or Hajime no Ippo. Despite being written by the author of Parasite, which is a pretty popular anime, which I thought was pretty mid, but anyways, despite being written by a really popular manga author, Historie I actually don't see talked about that much, and I'm actually kind of surprised because it was a pretty good read so far. Although being a fictional story, if you are a history nerd like I am, you would 100% like this one. You're gonna follow around a fictional account of the like of Eumenes, I'm gonna pronounce that right, but he's basically Alexander the Great's personal secretary in general, and you're gonna follow him from his childhood all the way to adulthood. After reading countless mangas set in Japan, because they're all set there since they're made there, this one's pretty refreshing because it's actually set in ancient Greece, which I think is a pretty cool thing. Now this one, it doesn't have too much action. There's a fight kind of here and there, and there's a pretty epic battle I've heard about that goes on later, but it's not too much fights. It's more so into kind of the political and just ancient Greek aspect of it. There's not too much I can honestly say to this one. It's just kind of a historical retelling and a fictional story of historical ancient Greece. I will say the main character, At times he kind of felt soulless and he didn't really have any emotions, which kind of made him not the most interesting character. So honestly, I'm giving this one a maybe 6.5 out of 10. I would give it a 6, but I like that it's historical. Recommend it if you like historical aspects, but there's probably better ones you can read. Now, Jagaaaaaan is a manga that you've most likely heard about before or you have seen, and once you read the first chapter, you can just tell by the art style alone and the way that it's telling the story that this is going to be a pretty banger manga, and you're definitely going to probably finish reading it. Now, I know I said that Parasite was mid, but I would say that this manga basically feels like the love child of if you take Parasite and Gantz and put them together, and Gantz is a pretty great manga, so this one's pretty good as well. I'll just get the summary of the plot out of the way because, like I mentioned, you've most probably heard or read about this one, but basically you have this main character, which is Jagaaaaaan, and he's just your average Tokyo police officer, but he's a little bit off and something's kind of wrong with his mind. And one day while he's riding a train, this mysterious monster just appears out of nowhere, and it's his job as a police officer to fix it, but he doesn't have anything around him. I think his gun is gone, and so somehow, some way, he transforms his right hand into some sort of a gun, and he puts his two fingers together and is able to shoot like this beam at the monster. Which I'm gonna just say, this kind of scenery of his fingers being this kind of hole, it's really weird looking to me, but it works out in a way, so yeah. Now, this is the type of manga that I would definitely say if you are a hardcore shonen fan but you're looking to read a seinen manga, this is one that I would 100% recommend as one of your first seinen manga. This one is honestly 10 chapters were not enough, and I'm gonna probably finish reading this one. I'm gonna give it like a solid 9 out of 10. Recommended if you want to read a seinen manga. You should read this manga. No, like, seriously, you should 100% read this manga. You have to. Reading 20th Century Boys to me felt like when I read Oyasumi Poon Poon, because it was the type of manga that I always knew was going to be great, but I had to wait till I was in the right time and right headspace to read it, and I'm so glad I picked this up now because just wow. This isn't just a manga. This is truly just an experience, and one that you need to experience yourself if you haven't already. One type of character I think a lot of series struggle on making is a great villain, and it's very hard to do, but 20th Century Boys, the villain in this is one of the best that you'll ever read, and it's so terrifying to read, but so gripping at the same time as it's a mystery manga, and they did a great job writing this villain. Without giving away too much for the plot, the general plot is basically you have this group of friends in their childhood, and they were just playing around in the 1970s, and somehow, some way, they basically laid seed for a cult to manifest over time. And now 25 years later, there's a virus going around that was essentially released by this cult that they created. Now, after all these time, these friends have to basically band back together and try and stop this cult. And I know that may not sound like the most interesting plot so far, but I'm specifically keeping it vague because I can guarantee you, as soon as you start reading the first chapter, you're going to finish it like I did. Now, for 20th Century Boys, I'm going to have to give it a solid 10 out of 10 manga. This was a life-changing manga. I relate to almost Oyasumi Poon Poon, which I love so much. I would recommend it if you just like manga in general. It's something you have to read. Imagine you're a Yakuza member. You're a hardcore gangster and everybody fears you and they tremble at the sight of you. You go around, you beat up other thugs. I mean, this is just your daily lifestyle. When one day, when getting in a fight with another group of thugs, unfortunately they catch you lacking and they get the best of you and they throw you over the bridge and into the water and you start drowning. But then all of a sudden you wake up and you're now a small anime girl in feudal Japan. Now, I say feudal Japan, but it's really just like this magical world, this medieval magical world, and as you can tell, I like reading pretty trashy manga like this sometimes, because you basically go from this hardcore gangster until you get isekai'd into a small anime girl, because, I mean, it's anime and manga, so why not? Now, I don't know what it is about me, but for some reason, when I start seeing these medieval fantasy worlds and it's an isekai manga, it's just exactly what I want to read, and maybe I'm just into trashy manga, but I did enjoy my time with this one so far. And although the plot's pretty simple, he not only gets isekai'd into an anime girl's body, but he's also the princess of this world just to make it even more complex, so that's pretty interesting. Now, one thing that I have to say about this one is the pacing on this one is fast. It does not waste any time. It's pretty light speed pacing, and I actually enjoy that about it because it just gets kind of straight to the point. It doesn't have too much filler in between it. Honestly, for what I'm feeling, just because I liked it, I give it like a maybe 7.7 out of 10. Recommended if you like trashy isekais. The Wolf Never Sleeps is another short manga. It's only about 3 volumes, so about a book length long, and only about 15 chapters, so it's a pretty easy read, but honestly, there's not too much that I felt when I read this one. One thing I will say about this one is the art style was really good, and almost every single panel was really detailed and drawn really well, which was pretty cool to see, but it is a shorter manga, so not something that's too far out there. But basically, you have this guy, he jumps into a black hole, which takes him to another world, and there's magic, and there's demons, and kind of monsters and stuff in that world. He just kind of goes around killing some things. I didn't feel really too much depth on this one. I would honestly give it maybe like a 6.5 out of 10. Wouldn't really recommend it, but I guess if you want a short manga to read, it's not that bad. Now, back to back with the isekai mangas, this one has the same problem as if you remember the second manga I covered, the space isekai, in that this guy just comes into this world, gets isekai'd into this world, and doesn't question it at all. He just kind of gets it here and he's just like, oh, well, this is what's going on now. So for the ideal sponger life, this is a disclaimer and ecchi as well, and it's a pretty bizarre start because basically he has a dream about him doing stuff with the princess or this kind of exotic woman that's a princess or something like that, and then he wakes up, realizes it's a dream, and then on his morning commute to work on his bike, all of a sudden he just falls down, opens up his eyes, and he's in this world looking at this woman, and she just sits him down and they start having a conversation, and he's none the wiser. Now, the reason I read this one is it's genre defining, and that what I mean by that is that it's not just an isekai, it's one part of an isekai magic type of manga, but it's also a sort of political drama manga, and it's also a romance story as well, so it's kind of all over the place, but it's pretty fun to read so far. And the general plot of this one is basically this princess that he had dreams about basically summons him into this world and has just one simple request for him. And that is basically just to marry her, live his life comfortably as her husband, and not try and take her power, because most people that would marry someone of her status would be wanting to take her power. So she just gets this normal looking guy and she basically says, be my husband and don't betray me. The only thing I don't like about this manga, and maybe it's just where I read it from, but each kind of page has this weird kind of graph over it. I don't know what you want to call it. It's like a bunch of squares, so it kind of hurted my eyes as I was scrolling through and just reading all of it. It's a weird little shader thing it has over it, but the art is still pretty good. I did enjoy my time with this one. Give it a solid 7 out of 10. Recommended if you like isekai and romance. So, smoking behind the supermarket with you is just about what it sounds like. It's a guy and a girl, and they go behind the supermarket and they share a cigarette, which I have to say are bad for you. But basically, you have this middle-aged worker in Japan, and he has a pretty tough job that he doesn't like. It's a pretty soul-sucking job. But the one thing that cheers him up every day is that he gets to go to the supermarket and he sees this girl that he's basically simping over. But one day, he has a real tough day at work, and he finally gets off and he gets to go to the supermarket. He gets to see this girl, only to find that her shift has already ended. So he's pretty distraught about this, and he's just so stressed from work and not being able to see this girl that he's just searching for a place to smoke, when all of a sudden a woman from behind the store calls him over to join her, and they sit behind the supermarket and they have a smoke together. As I was reading this, I was almost thinking, like, is this a commercial or something for cigarettes? Because I promise you, each chapter, anytime anything happens in it, they just always are smoking. Some way, somehow, they are just thinking about the thoughts of what happened as they're smoking, and that's basically what the manga is about. Honestly, I mean, it's cool if you like romance. I just think that they kind of smoked a little bit too much, which, I mean, I guess that's what it's about, but I'd give it like a 6.5 out of 10, but I would recommend it if you like romance. It just wasn't for me.
Takada-sensei, Michio, is that you? Oh, they're all dead.
Dragon Force is a manga that actually gave me nightmares for about a night or two, and I don't think it's because it's really that scary. I think it's just a combination of what happens in it as well as the art style it goes with. This one starts out with the class on a train, and after a train accident, basically you have two lone survivors, and they are stuck in a dark tunnel with no way out, and they are struggling to survive, and they're grappling with hunger, loneliness, and just the overwhelming sense of loss of all of their classmates and seeing everybody dead. But the way the art style just kind of shows this disturbing scenery just kind of disturbed me as well, in a good way, because that's what you want horror to do. And that's why I actually enjoyed this one, because it truly did strike that feeling of horror in me. And I think that that's something that's really hard to do for most manga. This is one I'm debating on making a video on, so that's why I'm not talking too much more about it. But so far for what I read, I'm thinking maybe like a 6.9, almost 7 out of 10. Definitely recommend it if you like horror. So to go with another sort of manga that starts with a crash, this time with the bus at the first part of it, but this one's going to be a little bit more lighthearted than the horror manga, so I thought this would be a good segue between them. The name of this one is The Girl, the Shovel, and the Evil Eye, which doesn't really explain much, and I just thought that that was a pretty weird title, so that's why I read this one. Oh yeah, it's also a fantasy isekai, which by now I'm sure you know I like those. So now this one, as far as isekais go, it's really not that original of a story. It's your typical fantasy world that has dungeons, adventurers, levels, all of that. The thing with this one is basically that they are people that mine, and so you have the protagonist, and he has a little lolly protagonist girl as well, and they use shovels to fight, which, I mean, maybe they play a lot of Minecraft, I don't know. The art style as well on this one, pretty normal. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not the most amazing. The protagonists, I mean, they're your typical just isekai and then lolly side protagonists as well. Honestly, for an isekai, even though I enjoy those, I'm giving this one like a maybe 6 out of 10. Wouldn't really recommend it. There's better to read for isekais. If you are the anime fan that likes to switch between waifus of the week, you should read Please Go Home Miss Akatsu-san, because that's basically what this one's gonna be. Now, you can mark my words, I can almost guarantee in the future this one will become a manga, and you're gonna see nothing but this blonde hair anime girl's face everywhere as people pick her up as the seasonal waifu, and then she's just gonna fade into existence like a month or two afterwards. As soon as I opened up this one and I looked at the art style of it and I looked at it was a blonde haired anime girl, I just knew this is the waifu type manga, and that's basically what it is. It's gonna be your normal rom-com type anime with an anime girl with blonde hair that's a little bit promiscuous, but not enough to make it, you know, cross the border into the other type of manga. And that's basically what you're going to be reading. This one's a very easy read because it basically has micro chapters, in that each chapter is only just a few pages long, but it's still a pretty fun and relatively easy to follow story. It just revolves around a few different bases, and you have this guy and a girl. They kind of like each other, but not really. I would say the only thing that's kind of holding it back is that it is so short that if you're going to catch up on it, you're just going to have to be waiting for weekly chapters. And you can easily finish reading it in, I'd say, maybe a few hours at most. If you are the type that just wants your weekly waifu, you're 100% gonna like this one. I'm giving it maybe like a 6.9 out of 10 just because it's not much more than that. Now the manga, I want a gal gamer to praise me. Instantly when I read this one, the reason I picked it up is because I thought about when you see those Valorant clips where people are begging for mommy to heal them, and yeah, I basically think that if you're the one to unironically do that, you've probably heard about this one. But I guess if you were looking for another waifu of the week, I'm going to provide you 2 in a row that you can look at, because that's what this one is as well. I mean, just look at this face. If you are critically online and if you like just following along the seasonal waifu, you're gonna like this one as well. And this is just like the last one. I guarantee this will most likely be an anime in the future. You'll most likely see this blonde hair anime girl everywhere for a few months, and then she'll fade away into existence. I'm not trying to just speed through it, but there's really not too much depth to talk about with this one. You have a rom-com, you have an anime girl. This one actually has pink hair, but you have this anime girl who's drawn in the same style as they always are when they're a waifu of the week. And you have this guy as well. The thing about this one is basically that they're hardcore gamers and they're critically online. That's about it. I can't really say much more than that. 6 out of 10. Let's get to the final manga, finally. So I was debating which one I wanted to be the final manga I read, and I decided to go back to one I actually read during my childhood. And I mean way back in the day when I was in elementary school and, still a new anime fan at that time. And I know you may be thinking, what is a grown man doing talking about this manga? But it's one that I would say is personal to me because I had, read it when I was a child. And there's, of course, a little story to it, and that is going to be Peach Fuzz. With this one, the plot is simple. It's definitely a children's manga. Basically, you have this girl, she goes to the pet shop and she's looking for a new pet, and she decides to go with the young ferret, which she names Peach after she sees like a fruit stand with peaches or something like that. And it's just your daily adventures of this girl, and she has this ferret, and that's really about it. Now, this one was actually a little bit hard for me to find online. I actually still hold a physical copy all the way from my childhood, and that's how I know about it, but it's not even on my anime list. It was actually a little bit hard to find even where to find pictures and things of it from. But I remember just being a young anime fan and reading this, and I actually remember my brothers seeing me reading this and asking me, what the heck are you reading? This is some little girl's manga or something like that. But in a way, it was just this new medium for me at the time. It was an anime manga, and it was just something that you read that went the wrong way, and it was a little bit different, but it just for some reason intrigued me. And it's that one manga that I've always remembered my entire life, and it just kind of pops into my head from time to time of, hey, remember that manga that you read? And it just kind of reminds me of being that young anime fan who was new and discovering everything. And that's why I think this one holds a special place in my heart, even though it's really not that great of a manga. Of course, I would want to say it's like a 10 out of 10, but it's probably, to be honest, like maybe a 6 out of 10 manga. But I would say if you have maybe any younger siblings that you're trying to introduce to manga or anything like that, this is one that you can probably buy for them. I think they go for pretty cheap online. You can let them read it and maybe get them into manga and anime. It's a good kind of first book there, but I just thought it'd be cool to talk about this. I haven't heard about this anywhere. It definitely is a children's manga, so that's probably why. But that's what I chose to read for my final day of reading a manga a day for an entire month. Now, I had this whole thing planned for the end of this video, but honestly, this video took a very long time, took an entire month of reading, and I'm just tired at this point. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the recent support on this channel. I'm greatly appreciative. I think I'm almost at 1.8 thousand subscribers, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a pretty big number to me. And I'm just thankful to everybody who's watched it. And I'm very thankful if you made it to the end of the video. I would say I just hope that maybe you found a new cool manga to read or something like that. And if you made it to the end, thank you. And if you just skipped to this part, thank you as well for at least giving me a chance and watching me. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for watching.